I'm going to call this as part one still of the Penny Dreadfuls, because I feel like I left some things out last week when I did my part one. We talked about me being born, and I started by pissing off rich white people. Really didn't explain that much. I only briefly talked about my mom, being sent to a home for unwed mothers. And this really bears a lot of explaining. Like, this is necessary to explain. My grandmother was extremely overbearing, extremely proper. Everything had to be just right. And if it wasn't, believe me, you'd pay the price for it one way or another. And that's really good to lay down the foundation here, because this explains why my mom fell asleep in a car and got carbon monoxide poisoning, because she was fighting with my grandmother, who locked her out in the middle of a blizzard. So where else is she going to go to be warm in the middle of the night but in the car, in the garage, and she didn't know you shouldn't sleep in there, when my mom became pregnant with me, unwed, she was 20, she was 23 when she got pregnant with me, so it's not a big deal, but back then, my grandmother made it a big deal. And how these things worked was, these homes for unwed mothers, was they would trick these young girls through religious guilt, societal guilt, things like that, to go have their babies there. They'd cover all the medical expenses and take care of the baby for you. By that I mean they would just go ahead and, find homes for the baby, and they kept the adoption fee. The mother didn't get anything, but she got to escape the shame. So I was supposed to be adopted away. That was what was supposed to happen to me. But my mom said she looked at my blue eyes and fell in love with me. She named me for a friend she had met on her trip to Scotland a few years prior. Her name is Jennifer, so that's how I am named Jennifer. A very boring ass name, but a very good story. My mother and her are still friends 50 some odd years later. They still correspond and things like that. So that is the thing. And talked about the grandmother blowing up the garage. That was actually right before we moved. Hi, Ashley. Right before we moved into the trailer park with Mom's boyfriend at the time. We came back to my grandmother's house right before my 5th birthday. Every birthday I had as a kid was living in that house in Heather Lane in Norwalk. My grandfather was my apple of my eye. Like, I didn't really have a dad, so he was my father figure. He was the person who 100% was there for me to teach me all the things. And I suppose he wanted a boy when he got my mom, and he was hoping for a grandson, and he got me. My mom wasn't big in the whole doing the outdoor stuff. She was, just a mom. She worked at a printing place, and she has memory problems, so she had a hard time with short-time memory problems and things like that. And I wore hand-me-downs, which made me the target of a lot of the making fun of as a kid from rich kids that I grew up around, which is why I have a real problem with them. Just because you have money does not make you better than other people. That's the thing many people would do well to learn. So my first 2 years were in a place, as I said, in school called Fitch School. And Fitch School was a great little school. The Great Hill, the Butternuts, all the things. And they closed down, so I went to a school, I think, called Naramick for a few years. During this time, my mom had broken up with Marty, and in some point, briefly, she dated a guy who worked for the carnival. Now, this guy was awesome. He wanted to give me a bounce house of my own. Now, imagine a kid who doesn't have a lot of friends, just Tony, really, and some of the neighborhood boys who kind of played throwing snowballs and ice balls at each other's face. I would be the coolest kid in the whole neighborhood because I would have my very own bounce house. That was going to be awesome, right? And my mother and grandmother both said no. I was so sad. So around that time, I decided I was going to build the coolest fort in the world. I wanted my grandpa to help me. I loved airplanes. I wanted to be a fighter. As a kid, I wanted to be a fighter pilot, flying the fighter jets and be a professional baseball player, because baseball was my sport. That was my jam. I was very, very good at it. And obviously I grew boobs at some point, and I was very pissed off about that. I wasn't mad. I used to walk around with no shirt on as a kid because I thought I was a boy. All my friends are boys, except for the occasional playing dress up in the wintertime in the basement or bad weather with my friend Tony. My grandmother's plethora of clothes for her yard sales and stuff. Yeah, I just really dress like a boy. My mom cut my hair short. She says it's because I got gum stuck in it, but the reality is my mom hated brushing my hair. Now, I am a 50-year-old woman now. I can't let my mom brush my hair now because she's rough. She ripped my hair out of my skull. You got gum in your hair. No, I did not. There were a lot of adventures as a kid building snow forts. That was one of the best Christmas presents I ever got was a thing that made snow blocks. We can make our own igloos and such. Now this is going to go ahead and I'm going to pause this because I have to deal with some things. But we'll go ahead and do another part later on today. So I'm going to upload this, and this is my childhood. We're going to pause it with wintertime snow blocks, and my birthday's in February.